Good morning, everyone. It's your host again, Paula Kettula, licensed clinical social worker, and you are listening to the Becoming a Peaceful Parent Summit. This summit is all about helping parents be patient, present, and loving with their kids. Today, I am really excited to just jump into this conversation with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and we will have a very interesting conversation about the Toltec wisdom and what it can teach us, and how we can use some of the principles from that into our relationship with our children. So welcome to the show.
Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just a couple words about Don Miguel Jr. You started an apprentice at a young age under your grandmother and under your father as well. And I can just imagine it was like such a special, honorable place to be, while also very difficult.
Yeah, it was fun. It was interesting.
Yes. Yeah, because as far as I understand, a lot of this ancient wisdom was passed down from generation to generation onto you. Mm-hmm. And then Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., kind of wants to spread this message to other people and really focus on helping others discover optimal physical and spiritual health in your books.
Yes.
And the latest book that we're going to talk about today is The 7 Secrets to Healthy, Happy Relationships, and how to apply that to relationships with our children. So anything else you would like to add to that?
No,
you're a busy man.
Well, yeah, my main job is I'm a father and a husband. So
yes.
We just finished taking the kids to school and getting them all ready and prepping. And then my wife have a few, about half an hour to ourselves, and when we talk before she goes off to work, and that's my morning. And then I have had half an hour to prepare myself for this conversation right now. Mm-hmm. and it's nice, that's my day. I'm a father full time. When I go do a presentation, a lecture, that's me moonlighting. It's like a second job, but this was my first job.
Yeah. So family man, father, being the father is the number one job. And that's, I admire that. And I think being a parent is the most important job in this entire world, which is why I'm doing this summit too, because parents need a lot of help, a lot of support.
Yeah.
So let's start. What is Toltec wisdom? Can you tell us just I know it's a lot, but like a brief Cliff Notes version, so people understand the philosophy, the spiritual background.
Yeah, sure. Well, the word Toltec is a Nahuatl word that in English means artist. If I translate the phrase, the Toltec art of transformation, into 100% English, it means the artist path of transformation. I am an artist. Wow. So when we talk about the Toltec philosophy, we're talking about the philosophy of the artist. The canvas for my work of art is my life. And that canvas is constructed with every choice, every action, every moment, every decision, every experience, every reaction and consequence. And with every stroke of that action, I can create the most perfect nightmare or the most harmonious dream. And it goes back and forth between the two, because the painting, the work of art, is always morphing. And the instruments I'm going to use to create that work of art is going to be my body, it's going to be my mind, it's going to be my force, that animates this body. Mm-hmm. And with every choice, with every yes and every no, I construct this work of art. So that's what we talk about when we talk about the tradition, the Toltec tradition, the Toltec philosophy. We're talking about I am the creator of my own life, as I co-create with my wife and kids, of course, and many people I love in my life. Right. The constant in all my relationships is me. So I can't give what I do not have. So I begin to heal my own relationship within myself. I begin to process all that stuff which allows me to have the opportunity to heal the relationships that I am in and enjoy them when life gives me the chance to enjoy them.
Right. That is such a beautiful way to look at ourselves as we move through this world. It sounds like we don't have to be victims. Oftentimes, people end up feeling victims to their circumstances. And granted, yes, there are lots of really terrible circumstances that people live in, but we can actually, like you said, we are the creators of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that the work starts with ourselves.
Yes.
If we want a more peaceful world, let's be more peaceful with everybody in every situation. Is that?
Well, it starts with ourselves always.
Yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt put it this way: no one can make me feel inferior without my consent.
That's right.
That's very consent. But to be being peaceful with everything, life. My grandma always said this: if you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans. Life will go up and down, left and right. When I was released the book, The Mastery of Self, someone asked me during the interviews, being a master of self means that you're always happy? And I said, no, it doesn't mean that. Life will go through ups and downs, left and right. There'll be exciting times, there'll be sad times, there'll be horrible times, and there'll be exhilarating times. There'll be everything. So the constant is you. So what makes you the master of self is that you stop pretending to be something you are not for the sake of someone else's point of view, especially your own. You accept yourself for who you are. Today I feel happy. Today I feel angry. Today I feel jealous. Today I feel sad. Today I feel like I have a headache because I'm going 2 days without coffee and I stop being that kind of thing. So every day is different. What makes me the master of self is that I accept myself for who I am. And when life gets tough, I apply everything I've learned to move the story forward, to progress, to heal. When life is going good, it allows me to enjoy it. So the ups and downs, left and right, is one of those things that allows us to enjoy it. For example, the key thing that we parents don't tell people who don't have kids or our kids ourselves is a very big truth. We have no idea what we're doing. We're doing the best with what we've got. Every birthday, it makes everything irrelevant. For example, when my son was born and I held him in my arms, yes, I read what to expect when you're expecting. Yes, I took the classes and all that, but when I held him in my arms, I had no idea. I realized I had no idea what I'm doing. I'm doing the best with what I've got. And then I realized that my parents were doing the same thing. They had no idea either. It's the first time I saw my parents not as mom and dad. I saw them as Miguel and Coco, because all of a sudden I saw them as peers. And I went up to them and I apologized. Papa, Mama, I'm sorry. I thought you knew what you were doing. They said, no, we're doing our best with what we've got. You see, as soon as you get used to being the parent of a 1-year-old and you get used to being the parent of that 1-year-old, they turn 2, making everything you knew irrelevant because the child you are raising is changing. And then they turn 4, they turn 8, they turn 10, they turn 20, they turn 30. Every birthday makes what you know about parenting irrelevant because the person you are raising or paying parent to is changing in front of you. What motivates them changes. What engages them changes. Puberty, the great equalizer, changes everything too. You go through moments as a parent that are beautiful moments. And then there's times as a parent that we go through some of the biggest fears we've ever experienced, because another thing that I realized when my son was born is that I've never experienced fear like this before. What happens if something were to happen to him and my daughter eventually when she was born? When our children are born, we meet the person we never want to say goodbye to. So there's that fear. So going back to the beginning is that to accept ourselves is sometimes we won't face it with peace. Sometimes we are not going to face it with that calm. Sometimes our emotions, and that's the thing, sometimes our emotions are thus. So pretending to be something we're not, suppressing ourselves because we don't want to look bad in someone else's eyes or the judgment that we have. That's what makes parenting very hard, because it's the moment we forsake ourselves for the sake of someone else's point of view, especially our own, our
Right.
expectation of what is to be a father, what is to be a wife.
Mhm.
But that's also the beautiful thing about it, because when you realize that you're doing the best with what you've got, you look at the child you're raising, and instead of projecting a mask of who I think she or he should be, I see the person who really is.
Mhm.
The two beings are doing the very best with what they've got. And just as they are facing things in life, we are facing ourselves. So to let go of the stress of trying to live up to an image liberates us to see what really is in front of us, to enjoy it when things are going well. When things are tough, we apply everything we know in order to move the story forward. In this case, help raise a child, because any person can bring a child into this world. What makes us a parent is the willingness to engage a child, to raise that child, to love them unconditionally, which means to see them for who they are rather than see them for what we want to see.
Right.
But we can't give that until we do that with ourselves, to love ourselves for who we are. Sometimes we are happy, sometimes we're at peace, sometimes we're not so peaceful, sometimes we have an incredible amount of resentment, sometimes we have a lot of fear, and sometimes we have the complete confidence that we know what we're doing. Once in a while, we'll get that one too.
Yeah.
And that comes with trusting ourselves to make a choice,
Yeah.
to do the research if there's research to be needed, to take a step. But ultimately, it all comes down to a moment of choice, whether you trust yourself to help this child, to help ourselves, comes from the willingness to see myself as I see this child. So from that point of view, unconditional love is seeing the full spectrum of who I am, from the beautiful nightmare to the beautiful harmonious dream. All of it is me,
And everything
and
in
we put it
between.
together.
Yes, and everything in between. So here's my next question. So how do we find out who we are? Because we come with a personal history of things that have happened to us, the way we were parented, all these things. We internalize those messages as a child. And then we have a society around us that puts a lot of like judgments, and you should be this way, should be that way. And I'm kind of thinking about the word domestication that happens, that suddenly like we almost in this process of domestication, we lose this sense of who we really are as a person. So how do we awaken from that? How do we awaken from this almost like this illusion that is around us? Maya, it's called Maya sometimes, and because we can't connect with our true self unless we wake up to the world and who we are. So what's the journey to the self, I guess? So parents need to start with that. How can they begin that journey?
Actually, in the very last part of your question lies the answer: knowing the difference between need and want.
Mm,
If you think we need, or I have to, then you're already trying to live up to an image that doesn't exist. That's where the illusion that we're talking about is.
aha, okay.
A moment of clarity without any action is just a thought that passes in the wind, but a moment of clarity followed by action becomes a pivotal moment in our life. That awakening comes in a moment of clarity. In a moment of clarity, just like an alcoholic or drug addict that wakes up one morning with that hangover and realizes what they've done, they have a choice to continue the illusion, in that case, to continue the drink, to have that hair of the dog, and the hair of the dog will take the hangover away. The hair of the dog means you take another drink, and that drink will take away your hangover, because all of a sudden it just goes away. But in that moment of clarity, when you have the choice, you also have the moment to redirect your attention and begin to take the stages to sobriety, to letting go of your addiction. I say addiction because, like you said, we were born into a world or a community where that conditional love exists. Domestication exists. Now, domestication is a system of reward and punishment by which we model the behavior of an individual, where if we live up to the expectation, we are worthy of a reward. But if we fall short of that expectation, we're worthy of the punishment. And since we are emotional beings who experience the full spectrum of our emotions, that reward, when we live up to expectation, feels like acceptance, which feels like love. And the punishment feels like rejection and the lack thereof of love. Is the way we've learned conditional love, to be conditioned. You live up to expectation, you're worthy of the reward. If you don't, you're worthy of the punishment. A system of reward and punishment by which we model the behavior of an individual. We take that and we internalize it. The way we internalize it is that we identify ourselves with it. It's part of who we are now. Mm-hmm. My father would put it this way. If I'm the one that's talking inside my own mind, who's listening? I am. Oh, if I'm the one who's listening, who's talking inside my own mind when I'm thinking? I am. And that's it, the relationship between me and me. We might say mind into heart, or left hemisphere and right hemisphere, whatever it is, in that dialogue, that relationship within me, what makes it to internalize it is when I begin to use my mind as my active domesticator by continuing to believe all those conditions, all those rules, all those, not even rules, they're conditions, in the sense that if I'm worthy, if I want to be worthy of love, if I want to be worthy of acceptance, I'll live up to this image and I should be perfect, which means to be completely free of any flaw. That internal narrator grabs that becomes my active domesticator, what my father calls the parasite in the 4 agreements. I call narrators in the 5 levels of attachment. Like Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make me feel inferior without my consent. The way we give consent is by believing it. Mm-hmm. When we internalize it, those beliefs become a part of our identity. We attach ourselves through an identity. Now, from that point of view, getting to know who we are is to find an identity with a definition that describes me. So I'm constantly looking for an identity. Toltec, Mexican-American, Chula Vista man, Tijuana guy, father, husband, author, lecturer, etc., etc., etc. There's so many identities I have because I have a very extensive life. I have a lot of relationships. I run marathons and half marathons. I'm a marathoner in that case. I'm a father, so I'm a father figure. I'm a husband. I'm an author. I'm a lecturer. All those things I just said. To look for myself in those things, I look for an identity, and then there's a definition of what that identity is. And then the slippery slope is to use that identity to domesticate myself with, meaning I use it as the model by which I domesticate myself. For example, hello, my name is Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and I don't take things personal. I don't make assumptions. I always do my best. I forgot the 4th agreement. Oh no, how can I call myself Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. if I don't know the 4 agreements? And there's a diatribe of judgment, punishing myself for not living up to that image of perfection that is Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., who doesn't take things personal, doesn't make assumptions, always does his best, and he's impeccable with his word. At that moment, if I live up to that image, then I'm worthy of love. But if I forget something like the 5th agreement, be skeptical but learn to listen, oh no, and there's that diatribe again, judging myself. In this example, I've used the 4 agreements as an instrument of domestication, which means I just corrupted the 4 agreements and I turned them into the 4 conditions of our personal freedom. The telltale sign that I'm domesticating myself with the 4 conditions is judging myself for taking things personal, judging ourselves for making assumptions, judging ourselves for all the rest. At that moment, we've corrupted this beautiful tradition with conditional love in the same way we've done with the teachings of Deepak Chopra, Buddha, Siddhartha, Jesus, Mohammed, psychology, psychiatry, Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the real addiction right here. I can add father, I can add husband, I can add those things, and I just corrupted a beautiful relationship, and I corrupted it where I have to live up to it. At that point, that domestication, that conditioning is what the illusion is that I believe to be something I am not. And in this case, what I am not is kind of tricky because it is something I am. I am a father. Just like the four agreements, I've corrupted it and says I'm a father and I'm this kind of father. And that at that moment, that identity gets corrupted as I use it to domesticate myself with. I am no father if my kids don't get straight A's. I'm a good father, and if they even get a B, that reflects on me, so they better behave. They better get to the right college. I'll pay money for some people to put them into the right college and all that kind of thing. And at that moment, it's all corrupted because it's not about the child anymore. It's about me and their actions, because their actions now represent me. At that moment, we've corrupted our relationship as well. So how do we break it? Well, first comes awareness. This is what we're doing. I'm using my own word to go against me. And just like a drug addict or alcoholic that goes in front of the group and says, hello, my name is so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict. Okay. Hello, my name is Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and I do take things personal. I do make assumptions. I'm sometimes not impeccable with my words. Sometimes I'm not skeptical at all. I'll buy hook, line, and sinker, and sometimes I don't do my best. Just ask my wife. She is my witness. It is the moment where I stop pretending to be something I am not and I accept myself for who I am. In this case, I do take things personal. I do make assumptions. In the other cases, I have used conditional love to shape how I parent. Yes, I have used my own anger. Yes, I've used my own jealousy. Yes, I am happy. Yes, all those things. The moment we stop pretending to be something we're not because we're so afraid of the punishment and the judgment. But that's what conditional love is. I accept myself as I am right now. I am the sum of every decision that I've ever made. At the same time, I'm the youngest I will ever be. Every decision has brought me here to this moment in time. And at the same time, I have my whole life ahead of me. How do I want to live it? How do I want to engage it? So you have that moment of clarity to know yourself. If you become aware that you're just constantly trying to live up to an image of who you are, then of course you're constantly trying to live up to this mask, what we call identity. An identity is a mask that we put on, you know, like a podcast show host, social worker, and all the stuff you have, you put on a mask. And if you let it happen, it can impose on you and then subjugate you. Take off the mask, and the truth of who you are is. At that point, we stop looking for ourselves in an identity with a definition. We get to know ourselves through the experience of being us. Get to know what it feels like to be in this body and own it. Know what it's like to see, and then all of a sudden realize that I'm the constant in every relationship that I am in. Everyone will see me different. If I look at the three women in my life, my daughter, my wife, and my mom. To my daughter, I am Papa. To my mom, I am son. To my daughter, that she calls me and she expects some things of me, but to my mom, I see something different. I'm the same person, but two people whom I love very much see me dramatically different. And then you add my wife, who sees me very different from my daughter and my mom, but I'm the constant. So how do I relate with all of them? Well, I realized that all three of them bring out a different element of me. My daughter brings out this bear, you know, this guy who likes to take care of her, take protector. My wife brings out a totally different element of me. And my mom, you know, she sees Miguelito, and maybe she'll never see Miguel, but Miguelito's perfect. So that's fine.
Mhm.
Every relationship is unique to the person I am in relationship with, even though I'm the constant. So it starts with healing my own expectations of myself, engaging and realizing that I've done this.
Mhm.
Someone taught me the beautiful way of saying this. Forgiveness is the moment you no longer wish the past was any different. You
Mhm.
accepted it, it happened. Now let it go. Meaning by that, no longer use it to go against yourself, no longer to use that emotional poison to hurt yourself like a scorpion that stings itself over and over again with its own tail. To accept that it happened is to not want to change the past anymore. It happened. That's the way it happened. All those years I
Mhm.
domesticated myself. Yes, it happened. Do I want to continue to happen? No. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to change direction. The best
Mhm.
way to let go of conditional love is to forgive ourselves for ever saying yes to it in the first place. But it requires a willingness to see ourselves for who we are, to be honest. This is how I feel. This is how I experience life. The moment that happens, we break a cycle. We
Mm.
break a cycle within ourselves. Because if we want to break a cycle in parenting with our kids, with uh, with our relationship with our parents, it starts with us. You know, to see which parts. Because here's the thing that happens when you don't know what you're doing. Going back to that original part of the presentation, when we don't know what we're doing, we naturally gravitate to what we actually know. And what do we know? How our parents did it, or
Right.
the extreme opposite of what our parents did, but it's still
Mhm.
based on what our parents did. We're
Mhm.
still applying the cycle. And whenever we begin to judge them and domesticate them, well, we realize that we're domesticating them to the judgments we have of ourselves, the expectations that we have of ourselves. So, how do we raise a child then? How do we practice the four agreements? Well, domestication works only because life teaches us through action reaction. The reason why domestication has been so harmful is because we've corrupted the way life teaches us. For example, let's imagine your home has electricity, which obviously it does. Both our homes have electricity.
Mhm. Correct.
At the end of the month, we're going to have an electric bill. Action reaction. In order for an object to move, there needs to be a force that moves that object. That
Right.
triggers another law of physics, which is for every action, there's a reaction of equal force. All right. Taking that premise, taking that knowledge of physics into this. At the end of the month, we are going to get an electric bill. Now, if I have the money, I'll do this. If I pay the electric bill, the consequence for paying the electric bill is that I am going to have electricity. Neither good nor bad nor right or wrong is just a consequence. Now, mind you, a consequence is the result of an action.
Mhm.
That's what a consequence is. If you don't have the money to pay for electric bill and you don't pay the electric bill, the consequence is you're not going to get electricity. Neither good nor bad nor right or wrong is just a consequence. If you pay the electric bill, you get electricity. If you don't pay the electric bill, you don't have electricity. Not
Right.
good nor bad. If
Right.
1 month you only have money to choose between food and electricity, well, I'm going to choose food because
Mhm.
that's what nurtures me. But if I want to be able to afford both, then I'm going to do the work that allows me to have the returns that allows me to afford both. Action, reaction. Neither good nor bad, nor right or wrong. Domestication, on the other hand, does this. If you pay the electric bill, you're a stand up person. You're
Mm.
a responsible person. You
Mhm.
obviously have a job that lets you pay it, so I'll lend you money. You're in good
Mhm.
standing in my eyes. You're a good person. You are righteous. But if you don't pay the electric bill, then you're a bum. You're irresponsible. You obviously don't have a job that allows you to pay for the electric bill. You're definitely, I'm not definitely not letting you money. You're not in good standing in my eyes. You're not respectable. You're none of that. You know, look at the difference between the two. Now, in domestication, conditioning, if you don't have the money to pay for food and electricity, and you have to make a choice, but you don't want to look like a bum in someone else's eyes. So here's the credit card to pay for both. And now you're really in trouble, because not only can you not afford electricity and food, you have a debt that's mounting because you're pretending to be something you're not for the sake of someone else's point of view. You're trying to keep up with the Joneses. You are trying not to feel the sting of being called poor. Because if you're poor, then that means whatever judgments people have of that, the sin of being poor, just quote unquote. And that's the difference between action, reaction, and domestication. Life teaches you through the consequences of your choices, where domestication teaches you with, if you want to be worthy of love, live up to my expectation. If you want me to respect you, live up to my conditions. At that point, we use conditional love to motivate someone to be something they're not. And we parents think that we're making them a good thing, because now if they become a lawyer, an activist, or an artist, they're successful. But if they're happy or miserable, that doesn't matter. They're successful because that means that I'm a good parent. At that moment, it becomes toxic. Now, here's the thing about our kids. To raise them is to teach them to experience the consequences of their own choices.
That's right.
About a year and a half ago, I was having quite a bit of anxiety. 2 years ago, I was going through a lot of anxiety because, well, my son has autism, and we had a little bit of a setback with his autism. Puberty hit. And I was going through those worries. What's going to happen to him? What's going to happen to him out there? Like he's only just a few years away from being out there. What's going to happen to me if I die? And I saw a movie called Black Panther. And in it, in a scene, the king tells the son, the dead king, to go into the spirit world, and the king tells him, the new Black Panther tells the father, I wasn't ready for your death. And the father says to him, it's a parent's job to prepare their children for their death. Did I fail you, my son, or something like that? To me, that meant the job of us parents is to raise them to survive without us. You see, up until their 10 or 11 years, we're basically raising them to survive. We're feeding them, we're teaching them manners and all kind of thing. We're teaching them, well, we're trying to keep them alive. But now, as they enter their preteen years and their teenage years, it's about teaching them how to survive without us.
Right.
It's also realize it's their life, not ours. So because of that, life teaches us through the consequences of our actions. We get to know who we are, not as an identity, but through the experience of getting up from when we fall down. Getting up teaches us so much, and it gives us the confidence to be able to stand up, because we know we can. So as a parent, the ability to take a step back and not take it personally, that's one of the agreements there, which is not to assume responsibility for their actions. It's their actions, is their will, their perception, teaching them that in life, consequences are our teacher. Now, the good or bad or right or wrong is what kind of consequence do you want? Right. My wife, she is the disciplinarian of this house, because when I tour, she can't say, wait till your father gets home. That doesn't work. So she is the disciplinarian. So what she does is she talks to my daughter, she talks to my son, and she says, all right, if you do this, this is the consequence. If you do that, this is the consequence. Which one do you want? And she always lets them have a choice, which for us is a very important thing, to have the confidence in themselves to make a choice. Because if we make the choices for them all their life, they'll never learn. If we never let them experience the consequences of failure, they'll never learn that failure is not a bad thing. It's just, all right, this path didn't work. I want it to work. What direction do I want to go to? Meaning, how do I stand up? As a parent, that is a pivotal thing, because that fear that we talked about at the beginning, that domestication we had at the beginning, blinds us from all that. It'll blinds us because we only see what we want to see. We only want the expectations we're wanting of them. We're projecting that weight of that family values. So going back to me, yes, I was born into a family with a long tradition of healers, but they weren't the ones who pushed me to it. In fact, I rebelled against it. And the only reason why I came back is to help my father, because he had a massive heart attack. But we were completely free to do whatever we wanted with our life. It was not a condition, just like with my kids. They don't have to follow mine or my dad's or my grandmother's footsteps. It's their life. In fact, that's the teaching that my daughter taught me. You know, when she was 4 years old, she and I were playing the game of who's going to blink first. And she lost right away. But I kept looking into her eyes. And she said to me, Dad, why are you still looking at me? I said, honey, I'm looking at you because you're beautiful. And she said, Papa, no, I'm not. I don't have any makeup on. And I'm going, oh, she's 4 years old and she's already thinking that. I'm like, where did she learn it? Mom, friends, YouTube, school, whatever. And then I realized it doesn't matter. She's learned it. So at that moment, I felt the sting of feeling the temptation of corrupting another beautiful expression, which is to love yourself just the way you are. If you want to be my daughter, you love yourself just the way you are. I'm aware that I'm tempted to do that. But you can never underestimate the power of planting a seed. So I just simply said, honey, you're beautiful just the way you are. And I left it at that. I didn't say anything else. But just in case that seed didn't land in the right place, I repeated that sentence. I sprinkled across a couple of weeks just in case. And then one day she says to me, Daddy, I know I'm beautiful just the way I am, but makeup makes me look prettier. And at that moment, I was impressed because my daughter, she created a counter argument to me, which is perfect. And it taught me the lesson once again. I don't control her perception. She does. It's her life. Even though she's 4 years old, yes, I am going to be a father. I'm not her best friend. I'm her father. Just like my mom, my wife, she's not my best friend. She is my wife. And the reason what I mean by that is that out of 7.5 billion people living in the world, with my wife, she's the intimacy. There's no other person. My intimacy with her goes further than any best friend. She is my wife. And I say that title with complete honor and because we open up completely. We know each other. With my daughter, the same thing. Out of 7.5 billion, she is the daughter. She is, and also my son, same thing. They're the ones with whom I have given my engagement as a parent to, my love for in that way. And they are my kids. They're not my best friend. And I'm not pretending to be their friend. I am their father. And what that means is my level of respect for them is high and incredibly, which means I know that it's their life. A couple of weeks ago, she was so upset. She was pushing herself. Like she says, so hard to get straight A's. And me and my wife looked at her, honey, your mom and I never asked straight A's from you. You did. And she looked at us and she just broke down and cried because she realized we never said it. We never said it. She did it to herself.
She was putting that pressure on herself. Wow. So, what a beautiful conversation. And I would really love to sit here and continue this. We do have to start wrapping up for today. But the main things that I am hearing is awareness, responsibility, as well as letting yourself go with the ups and downs and sideways, being authentic with that, and using life as a teacher. You know, using those, like you said, the consequences that are embedded in life. We don't need to put any extra consequences for children. Like, you know, I'm going to take this away or that away. It's already in life. It's just life this is when we find awareness.
No, we do that. We do that actually. It's called positive and negative reinforcement. Positive and negative reinforcement is not bad or good. Reinforcement is adding and subtracting. For example, if I want certain behaviors, for example, for my son, he's very motivated by computers. So if he gives me a week where he does pretty good at school and does like that, he earns his computer throughout the night, and he can play with that.
Yeah.
Subtraction, negative reinforcement is this. If I know my son is tired and we want to go out to a restaurant, I know he's tired and he is going to have a possible meltdown at a restaurant after 6 o'clock. So I'm going to subtract it, which means I'm going to take out the restaurant. So I'm not going to set him up for failure. Positive and negative reinforcement. Punishment type 1, punishment type 2. Punishment in the case like if he hits someone, he loses the privilege of a computer or his YouTube for 5 days, but he has to earn it back. If he earns it back, he gets it back. So in those kind of things is knowing the difference between what really is positive and negative reinforcement, which is adding and subtracting reinforcement. You know, that sometimes we have such a connotation with negative and positive that we don't know what it really means. If you think that positive is like, oh, you're such a good boy, not kind of, that's not positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is adding things that you like to certain behaviors, subtracting things from certain behaviors, punishing type 1 if there's a certain type of punishment or consequence, and punishment type 2. The difference is that the motivator is not my love. It's not my judgment of them. That's the main thing. They have it, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have experienced consequences. And that's really the most important part, because most parents, most people do is, if you want to be worthy of the family name, you'll get me those straight A's, you'll get into the right college. At that moment, that's conditional love.
Then it's conditional. So you can do both, love and positive rewards, or withdrawing those, and and it needs to fit the situation and not be something outrageous. So thank you so
love and logic for that is really good.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. Such a spirited conversation. I hope that people out there really maybe listen to this interview twice to really let it all sink in, because it is so important that we awaken in this world, we awaken ourselves to who we are, so that we can really awaken our children too, and not continue well, the domestication is around us, but there's this possibility, this opening to see our children as who they are. And I value your work around that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your time.
Yes, you too. Bye now, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.